Welcome to my Masterclass series. The aim of the Masterclass is to help independent restaurants make more money by increasing sales or reducing costs, or a combination of both. Today I'm talking about what I believe is the number one threat facing the hospitality industry. Not food costs, not energy costs, not rental costs, but labour. I'm hoping to convince you that the Chancellor's budget won't make a blind bit of difference to that threat. Yes, the budget will influence wages and employment costs, but you can't afford to wait. This session shows you how to tackle labour costs effectively. My masterclasses normally run for about 5 minutes, but I apologise for this one, which runs to about 11 and a half, because it's quite a complex subject, so please bear with me. In essence, the cost of labour has been increasing steadily, while sales impacted by a decline in disposable income have fallen. The result of these two trends is to produce a significant increase in labour percentages. I'm going to demonstrate how this is impacted on some large companies, but I also present my unique approach to delivering labour costs in the 25% zone as opposed to the ones experienced by major chains in the 30% plus zone. As a starting point, there was a really interesting interview on BBC Radio 4 this week, where a woman who has 2 children worked part-time, and her husband, a teacher, meant that they had a household income of £70,000 and she was unable to cope with rising prices. She was a living case study of the cost of living crisis, but the fact that her family income was £70,000 gave the whole thing a new dimension, as the focus has mainly been on the impact of the cost of living on poor families. So it's more widespread than we thought. Also, today's newspaper report that even students are suffering with a real 30% decline in grant income. So let's look more closely at disposable incomes. Since 2019, the price of food has grown by 33%. Mortgage rates are up. Credit card interest rate is more expensive. Energy costs have risen, as is water, and this against the background of a plateau in real earnings since 2019. This has brought about a decline in real disposable incomes. This is a key statistic in the hospitality business, as the elasticity of demand for restaurant meals is 1, signifying that for every 1% drop in disposable income, there's a 1% drop in meal volumes. And that's before we factor in all the increased prices which exacerbate the situation. So let's have a look at cost rises in hospitality. This is not a sector in crisis, it's a sector under siege. Bank rate has grown from 0 to 4% over the last 4 years. Operators are having to find ways to repay bounce back loans. The minimum wage has increased, and among 18 to 24-year-olds, a key group in the employment service, it's gone up by 16.3%. Brexit had an impact with a fall in employees coming from the European Union and a resulting spike in wages. Retention in the hospitality industry is always a challenge, but recently UK Hospitality has reported that 42%, yes 42% of new employees quit within 90 days of joining a restaurant team. The departure of that person not only impacts on the productivity of the team, but they estimate that it costs £2,500 to replace that person. When I say it's under siege, this is perhaps best demonstrated by the fact that 75% of operators have only 6 months cash reserve and 30% have zero. The impact of this on hospitality jobs is extremely serious. Over 19 months, there's been a consistent decline in employment in hospitality every single month. A total of 111,000 jobs have been lost. That's 50% of the total unemployed in the UK. 58% of operators have cut staff numbers and 60% have cut staff hours. So labour's been cut in terms of wages, but has not been fundamentally fixed. Cuts hurt productivity, they hurt service, cuts hurt morale, and putting all this together, they hurt sales. So customers impacted by the fall in their disposable income experience less satisfactory service in their restaurant visit, causing them to reduce their frequency, thus exacerbating the decline in sales. Service has been proven consistently in all the research I've undertaken over the years to be the most important aspect of a meal out, with the exception of cleanliness. So bad service equals bad sales. Action taken by operators in the hospitality industry has largely involved increased prices, and the industry reports that 70% of operators have increased theirs. This has impacted on demand already vulnerable as a result of the decline in real disposable incomes. That decline has been quantified by UK hospitality as an 8% drop in meal volumes. Paradoxically, the demand for out-of-home catering has not declined, so people are switching to deliveries, which are up by the same amount, 8%. People are finding economies by using a delivery service for home dining and not visiting restaurants, thus avoiding paying for restaurant drinks, which are 3 or 4 times the price level to be found in supermarkets. This is having a further impact on average spend, which is the other half of the equation, which includes frequency of visiting. So frequency has fallen, and the drop in average spend accelerates the impact on revenue falling. At the bottom of all this is a broken restaurant labour model, which is outdated, does not match trading peaks, nor the task load. It does not reflect the shape of the day, and in essence does not match demand. This is amply demonstrated by the current status of labour costs in major chains. Mitchell & Butler, for example, are currently showing a 33%, up from the mid-20s. JD Wetherspoon's, a previous client, are reporting 35% labour costs, again up from the high 20s. And Wagamama's parent company is showing a labour cost of 38.5%. So far, so bad. However, there is an answer, and I have it. My early days in marketing with my economics degree was with fast-moving consumer goods companies, where sales forecasting was the order of the day. This didn't involve just forecasting future sales of going brands, but also new products, where I launched 10, and modestly should forbid, but I won 5 awards for those new product launches. When I joined Grand Met Retailing as their marketing director for 600 steakhouses, there was no discipline of applying forecasting, which contributed to a steady decline in covers. Changing this allowed us to revitalise the business strategy, and we won a Katie Award for the top group marketing campaign, partly as a result of the more meticulous approach to data. When I set up Spur Steakhouses in Dublin in the 2000s, I faced another challenge. Spur is a South African concept, and the managers we brought over to help introduce the brand to Europe worked on the same principles they had in South Africa. There's no minimum wage regulation, and staff were paid a percentage of sales. That's front of house staff were paid a percentage of sales. In Ireland, their staff scheduling mirrored the overmanning in South Africa, with the effect of producing a labour cost in excess of 40%. We created a forecast of future sales on a detailed hour-by-hour basis, and we were able to marry those forecasts with staff allocations, which meant we were able to achieve a labour cost of 25% on a business with a £10 million turnover. I called this system team planning, or TP for short, as a nod to Spur's Native American theming. More recently, at a Brighton restaurant I sold last year, our revenue was £700,000, and using the same techniques, we were again able to deliver a 25 labour cost. And yes, folks, all of this is provable. As a result of the pressure on labour costs, a number of software companies have entered the field. Companies like Forth and Deputy, who provide software service which include forecasting and payroll. Their disadvantage is that they're used primarily by multiple chains, not independents, and they are expensive. My TP system is made for independent restaurants, where we match labour with demand. It's been proven to work, and it just requires a 30-day setup at a modest cost. If this is something that excites you or just interests you, and you'd like to have a 15-minute chat to see whether it can work, please drop me an email at the address at the end of the presentation and we can arrange to get together. So, to summarise, I've described how real incomes are falling and at the same time prices generally are rising. Hospitality costs are also rising, leading to job cuts with a severe impact on service. Service has a direct impact on guest satisfaction, and this has been further eroded by price rises. This has led to a decline in meal volumes and a drop in average spend. Both of these have a cumulative effect on revenues. At the same time, labour cost percentages have escalated because the current labour model is useless and needs TP, which matches staff supply and guest demand. TP is the answer, not the Chancellor. So, thanks very much for joining me today. I look forward to meeting you again on the next Masterclass. Bye-bye.